You're lying in bed, your partner's next to you, phone in hand, thumb moving on autopilot. You're both staring at glowing screens 2 feet apart in the same room, in the same marriage, thinking about the exact same thing. That $340 charge you forgot to mention, the one sitting in your notifications since Monday, quietly waiting for someone to bring it up first. Nobody says a word. The room stays this quiet for another 20 minutes. And somehow that silence is louder than an actual fight would have been. That's not a communication problem. That's not even really a fight about money. That's fear wearing an invoice as a disguise. Here's the pattern you probably already recognize, whether you've ever put a name to it or not. You argue about the credit card bill, about who let the savings account get this low, about whether the vacation was really necessary, or the new tires, or the birthday gift that cost more than either of you said out loud you were comfortable with. But strip away the dollar amount, and what's actually underneath is always the same question. Are we safe? Is the ground still solid under this family? Researchers at Kansas State University tracked more than 4,500 couples over years, not months, and found something almost every therapist already suspected but couldn't prove with numbers. Financial disagreements predicted divorce more strongly than fights about kids, sex, or in-laws combined. It didn't matter how much a couple earned, didn't matter how much debt they carried. The fighting itself was the danger, not the number behind it. Sit with that for a second. It's not the balance in the account that breaks a marriage. It's the argument that balance triggers. And if you're a Xennial, here's the part that might actually make you exhale a little. You were set up for this exact kind of argument long before you ever said, I do. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Economists at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis tracked the wealth of American households born in the 1980s against every generation that came before them. In 2010, that cohort was sitting 25% below where history said they should be at that age. By 2016, supposedly further into recovery, the gap had actually widened, 34% below benchmark. You didn't imagine that. You didn't mismanage your 20s. You graduated into a job market frozen solid by September 11th, watched the gig economy get invented around your unpaid internships, and then, right as you were finally gaining ground, 2008 pulled the floor out from under you again. Twice before you'd even turned 35, the rules changed without anyone bothering to ask you first. So when money gets tense in your marriage now, understand what it's actually landing on. Not solid ground, a foundation that was already cracked before you and your partner ever met. This is where it stops being just emotional and gets physical. In a study published in the journal Science, researchers asked people to simply imagine an unexpected expense, a car repair, somewhere between $300 and $3,000. Nothing happened yet. No money left anyone's account, just the thought of it. And for people already under financial strain, that single thought dropped their cognitive performance by the equivalent of 10 to 13 IQ points, enough to measurably impair judgment, patience, reasoning in real time before a single dollar changed hands. That's not weakness. That's biology, which means the fight you had last Monday, the one where your partner seemed unusually sharp, unusually cold, unusually unlike themselves, there's a real chance their brain was temporarily operating at a deficit before either of you said a word. There's a second piece of biology working against you here, and it's one you've actually lived through the invention of. You grew up with cash, physical bills, counted out, handed over, and handing over that cash used to trigger something real in your brain, a small, immediate pinch that behavioral economists literally call the pain of paying. It's a built-in brake pedal. It made you feel the loss in the moment, so you'd think twice. Tap to Pay removed that pedal entirely. Brain imaging shows credit card purchases barely register in the insular cortex, the same region that processes physical pain and loss. Instead, they light up the nucleus accumbens, the brain's reward center, so swiping can actually feel a little like winning instead of losing, which means the generation that grew up trusting the tactile weight of a $5 bill is now spending through a system engineered to feel like nothing happened at all, or worse, like something good just did. That's why money fights escalate faster and cut deeper than almost any other kind. You're not two calm adults sitting down to debate a budget. You're two nervous systems, both quietly impaired, both blindsided by spending neither of you fully registered happening. trying to problem solve under conditions neither one of you chose or consented to. You know the shapes this takes. You've probably lived at least 3 of them. One of you becomes the household's accountant, tracking, reminding, lying awake, doing math at 2 a.m. that nobody asked you to do. The other becomes the avoider, opening statements later and later until eventually they just stop opening them at all. Because not knowing feels safer than knowing. Small purchases get quietly scrutinized. A coffee, a hobby, a $12 impulse buy turns into a referendum on trust. Affection starts thinning out in the exact same months the savings account does, and neither of you can quite say why. Only that something's gone quiet between you that used to be loud. Sometimes it's simpler than either of you realize. One of you was raised to see money as safety, something you protect and hoard, never fully trust. The other was raised to see it as proof you made it, something you spend a little to enjoy. Because what's the point of surviving if you never get to live? Neither belief is wrong. They were both formed before either of you turned 10, sitting at somebody else's kitchen table, watching somebody else's parents handle a bill. But put those 2 beliefs in one household, and suddenly, every purchase becomes a quiet referendum on whose childhood was right. And according to the American Psychological Association, money has been the single top-ranked stressor for adults since they started tracking it back in 2007, and roughly a third of people with partners say it's the biggest source of conflict in the relationship. So if this is where your marriage keeps landing, you're nowhere near alone in it. None of that means the marriage is failing. It means 2 people are carrying financial fear with absolutely nowhere shared to put it down. Here's where it gets more hopeful, because there's an actual, tested answer waiting here. Not a guess, not advice from a podcast. An actual multi-year study. Researchers ran a 2-year study following newly engaged and newlywed couples. One group merged all their money into a single joint account. Another kept everything separate. A third did whatever felt natural to them. No instructions at all. The couples with separate accounts saw the slow decline in relationship satisfaction that almost every marriage experiences over time. So did the couples left to their own devices. But the couples who pooled their money into one account didn't decline at all. Their satisfaction held steady, protected, for the entire 2 years. The researchers' explanation is almost embarrassingly simple once you hear it. Separate accounts quietly turn a marriage into a business arrangement. Who owes who? Who paid last time? Whose turn is it? Joint accounts create a we instead of a constant negotiation between you and me. Not because the money magically stretches further, because the fear finally has somewhere shared to land, instead of bouncing back and forth between 2 people who are both already scared and both pretending they're not. And nope, that doesn't mean surrendering every bit of independence. Financial therapists who work with couples on exactly this problem tend to land on the same middle path. Route the paychecks into one shared account that covers the bills, the savings, the future. Then set up a small, equal, automatic transfer into 2 separate accounts every single month. No receipts required. No explaining that purchase. That part is just yours. You get the protection of we without giving up all of you. So if you and your partner are lying in that bed tonight, both quiet, both scrolling, both thinking about the same unmentioned charge, here's the shift worth trying. Instead of asking, why did you spend that? Try asking, what were you afraid of when you did? That one sentence moves you from a courtroom to a conversation, from 2 defendants building a case against each other to 2 people finally sitting on the same side of a problem that was never really about the money at all. You don't need a financial advisor to fix this part. You don't need a bigger paycheck either, though it wouldn't hurt. You need one honest conversation about what you were each taught to fear, and a willingness to hear the answer without turning it into ammunition. You didn't marry the wrong person. You're both just carrying more fear than anyone ever taught either of you how to name out loud. If any part of this hit close, tell me in the comments how long you 2 have been quietly carrying this.